Hey, yo, what it did, y'all? Let's get right into it. It's time for me to give you a little quick update, right? It's been like 2 days or whatever. More importantly, I'm in Sanctum again, and I want to talk about it. Some of my thoughts on it, just from a preliminary, like 2 days of it, not like a full 2 days. I'm playing shorter sessions this league. Don't take that as an indictment on the league, right? I'm just trying a healthier approach to the game, quite frankly, because I want to actually be able to make content for longer this league. There's a lot of things that do interest me. It's just that I know if I go 36 hours in the first, like, I'll lose it. You know what I mean? But there's a couple things I want to talk about today. The first on the list is, of course, actually the new, like, the changes to Sanctum. Now that I have more hands-on experience with it within the context of making money, right? Because I tested it before my last video in standard, but that's just me getting a rough feel. I'm not really tracking the money the same way I would be tracking it right now. And I do have some thoughts now that I've like seen it. So, number one, how bad is the nerf? It's kind of bad. I can't say I'm the happiest camper about it. Doesn't change the fact that Sanctum is still my favorite content in the game. And it's worth noting that almost every version of this answer would have still yielded that answer. Like the nerfs, outside of them literally deleting Sanctum, Sanctum's probably still going to be my favorite content, mostly because of how it plays. It is very important that the content that we play is rewarding. Yo, can we get some delve love, please? On that note, but like, it's important that the content you love playing is actually like rewarding. But I'm willing to take a pretty substantial hit in rewards per hour for ability to enjoy playing the game, and that's something that Sanctum will just simply always provide for me. And the nerfs are not actually all that bad. A quick rundown of the nerfs, if you're not super familiar, right? It's a reduction in the frequency at which you will see divine, the high tier currency rewards they call it, which is divines, exalts, and nulls. You reduce frequency, which I definitely feel that, and then specifically the 2 divines at the end of Sanctum has been turned to 1 divine at the end of floor on floor 3, which was something that was not noted, by the way. I thought they were just gonna make it 1 divine at the end of Sanctum from that. No, it's actually 1 divine at the end of floor, even if it shows up in the 3rd slot on 3rd floor, which is really weird and definitely screams of time limitations. But that means it's still like decent-ish at like getting a quick payout if things go awry. What does this actually mean overall for my thoughts on Sanctum is now what we're going to get into as I talk about like the context of it within trade. Number one, if you're a Sanctum runner already, you've noticed that tome prices are dirt cheap, or especially if you played in Freesia League, you're noticing that tomes are significantly cheaper than they were during Freesia. Dropping a tome early in Freesia, around this point in Freesia League, I was paying almost 2 div per 3 tomes roughly. Like it was a much more expensive environment compared to right now. I'm getting anywhere between 12 and 16 tomes a div, and that was, or I should say yesterday. I haven't looked at the price since waking up today. But the value is just different, right? So significantly lower entry cost, and obviously with entry cost, it either means that the supply has gone up or the demand has gone down, and in this case, it's both. They are still generating them normally through maps, but you can target them out of Betrayal. I don't think very many people are targeting, but if they are targeting them, that's another source of it. Very important, by the way, for like SSF players or like group players or anything. If you need tomes, Elrion 3 in transportation, he'll hook you up, right? Now, that said, let's talk about the demand side of that, because I think the demand going down is a far more important part of this. And it's because these nerfs are scary. And they were dubious. So I know a lot of people who just like were not willing to YOLO their league start off of this. In short, the divine nerf definitely feels worse. I feel like you do feel it. I would guesstimate somewhere between 20 and 25% reduced frequency of seeing the high tier currency rewards, which is fine. Right now, it's fine. Later, it's going to pose a problem. And I say later because right now I feel like we're still in the honeymoon period where, chaos is still pretty valuable in and of its own, but also GCP high value. Glass blowers less to a lesser extent, but still pretty high value. Fuses have value. Alterations have a lot of value, right? Farming a lot of these bubblegum currencies out of it right now doesn't feel as bad as it will later, right? Usually, as you transition into like later stages of a league in Sanctum, you start to use bubblegum currency as just kind of your break even Or like you always profit off of the bubblegum, but you're really hunting divines because that's where the profit kicks in at. And I think we're going to see, like, as we get to that transition, Sanctum is going to feel worse and worse as a mechanic, in the same way that heist ends up feeling, in the same way that expedition ends up feeling. The other side of this is that because we do not generate as many divines, the strategies within it have also changed. I feel like quant farming is actually significantly weaker at the moment due to the fact that there's also less value, so just think about all the unique relics, right? There are multiple uniques that give uniques at the end of them that are worthless, right? The only unique relics that are worth the damn are original scripture for Osin and chains of castigation for Sandstorm Visage. But you don't really, how do I say, like, you don't get that same level of value anymore from the other things that you could get, because Sandstorm Visage is not a high margin item anymore now that Hex Blast has been neutered. I want to clarify something here. If you're like, by the way, Sandstorm Visage is a ridiculous helmet that people should stop forgetting outside of Hex Blast. I feel like everybody remembered it exists for Hex Blast because Hex Blast has a 4% base crit on its base gem. And we're like, we could use this to fix the base crit on this decrepit gem. Perfect. And everybody kind of forgot how easy life gets on a number of spells if instead of working at 6% base crit, you're working at 12, 13% base crit. So don't forget that this helmet is still really strong. And it's actually the cheapest on a league site it's been in quite some time because of this, like, everybody's like somewhat forgetting, somewhat not forgetting state because of Hex Blast nerf. Keep an eye on that. But those are still the only unique giving relics that are worth it. Now, obviously, Blood of Innocence for the jewels, but that's a gamble. That's its own type of gamble and its own thing. Now, the other side of this is usually that you would care about like Hour of Divinity and Gilded Chalice. However, their value is also fairly low right now, and part of it is due to the fact that relic setups are not strong enough yet. Right, we're only 4 days in, and I think a lot more importantly though is that those are gambling strategies. They rely on your ability to get end of run divines to really extract value. My bad, not extrapolate, extract value. And if you're getting less divines, your gamble goes worse, which means the average return on value of your gamble is worse, and therefore you are willing to pay less than you previously were paying for them, which then in turn affects the quant farmers. So, all of that to say, quant farming got a lot weaker. This is currently a lot weaker than it has been previously, and I would be eyeing up reveal farming. So you can reveal the whole board and be extremely depressed when you see 0 divines across the entire board, right? That's more or less the sum of the thoughts. I think the merchant strat will still be fine. I do that just because you still play merchant, roughly the same idea of forcing your way into all seeing and stuff. I just think that the reveal strategy is now looking like the premier like mid game option, whereas I thought like a budget quant hybrid or a quant merchant hybrid or even just pure quant was a little bit stronger personally previously. I do not feel the same at the moment, and I think that's a very important like adaptation to make if you were planning on farming Sanctum currently. And then again, like I said, my projection going forward, I expect Sanctum's condition to only get worse and worse relative to the field. But I do want to make a note that like as it gets worse and worse, Sanctum will still maintain a position of being like the poverty bailout mechanic, if that makes sense. Like it is so impossible to lose money in Sanctum outside of literally breaking the run first room. Like it is so hard to lose money on Sanctum. So at least if nothing else, you can't like you can't be torrentially poor with it, and like it just joins the echelons of essences, harvest, not even harvest. My bad. Harvest actually scales pretty decently. Heist, expedition of just really really strong early mechanics that eventually taper off into like quote mediocrity as you start to see like the T17 farms and whatnot really pop off. All right, that's a lot of words about Sanctum, and if you want more words about Sanctum, Discord, Twitch, they exist in the description. You can leave comments. I'll ask questions on. I'll give you more thoughts there. But otherwise, like plenty of time to ask me about it on stream and whatnot. But now what I want to really get into is like I did say I'm in Sanctum, which means of course I transitioned my character over to Sanctum as I said I was going to do in my last video. I didn't do all of the end game stuff ahead of time, but it's because I got bored of mapping. And I said, fuck it. I want to do Sanctum. It's my favorite content. We're in there and it feels fantastic. Icicle Mines, as per usual, does exactly the thing I like it to do in Sanctum at the cost of damage. And I said the cost. I was asked on stream 2 days ago, which do I think is better between, Icicle Mine and Penance brand? I said Penance. It's like, which one that feels better? Penance. Which one this? Penance. And so I realized that I had this question looming over my head of just like, well, why do you play Icicle Mines in Sanctum if Penance is just better in pretty much every conceivable way? And there's a really simple answer to that. Because I fucking feel like, no. The actual reason is that the aim requirement on Icicle Mines is non-existent. And I value that a lot in some of my like earlier states, because realistically, as long as your PLB reaches anywhere between 25 and 40 million DPS, everything else after the fact is gravy. Like, what makes Penance so ridiculous is that it hits like 75, 80 million DPS with like sneezing, and then just gets to invest in all sorts of other versions of speed and whatnot. But given that my character currently is already chilling at about 25, 30 million DPS, we chilling. Like right now, my like I could stop investing in this Sabo right now and we would be chilling. I'm probably gonna get like 2 more upgrades to make tanky, like double tank mod, Lycia just a little bit easier, but we're chilling otherwise. And so because I can reach that point on so many builds, which hopefully, as long as this like new healthier approach to taking to play in the game pans out, I can show you just how many builds like really get to this point without really struggling for it. I like, you'll see that like it's actually not that hard to get into farming Sanctum so much as like the builds that are like super top end, doing like 5.5, 6 Sanctums an hour, on perfect mod, on like perfectly doing it with like Winds of Fate in and whatnot, that have way overkill damage. So then the other things about this build that I've been enjoying, which I'll talk about a little bit more when we go in game, is stuff like the ability to actually live hits. Funnily enough, I'm wearing Annihilating Light and it just doesn't really matter. Outside of monster damage mods, I don't die to anything outside of specifically the last hit, the like last 2 or 3 volleys of the ice artillery, which I just shouldn't be getting hit by, first and foremost. And there was something else that I noticed like actually did a pretty substantial amount of damage to me, even without damage boost or anything. But other than that, like I don't really take damage like that. So, or like not damage that would kill me anyways. And my clear is, insane. You get the speed in this build from, Quicksilver and all that stuff, yada yada. We'll talk about it when we go in game, right? Because I think that's everything I needed to preface here. Again, if you want to see more of this stuff, the footage you're seeing behind you is mostly produced live. There's behind you. Wow, good job, me. I meant behind me. It's mostly generated live. Some of it I might record like on the side if I need to highlight something in particular, but it's usually recorded live on stream, and you can just come hang out, enjoy the vibes. It's a good time. Which shout out to y'all, by the way, for showing up, who have been showing up. It's been awesome hanging out with everybody. Now let's go in games. I can quickly like show some things about the character that I've changed and wrap this video up so I can get back to blasting, right? Let's get it. Alrighty, we're in game. I would go over to my Sanctum area, but then you'll hear the sounds of Convocation on repeat. I don't think you want that. So for now, you don't have to hear that, right? Now we're at level 95 just from running Sanctum. I'm gonna end up hitting like probably like 98 by the time I get my Mage Blood, because that's kind of the goal at this point. I'm just gonna use this character to farm a Mage Blood. That's where it currently is. You'll notice the number one thing in here is that my reses are cooked. And that's intentional because I like I said, I don't even with reses this low, you don't actually die to that many things unless you're being stupid. So we're using Annihilating Light as a result then, because why not? This thing says deal triple damage. There's another reason why this is so good for the build though, because when I put this in my POB, over 2 pretty solid weapons. If you looked at my last POB, like there were pretty solid weapons that are only releasing +1 on both of them, and the second dagger was missing my throwing speed. Like they weren't missing a whole lot, but because my build has so many levels in it, right? March of the Legion, which I upgraded to +6. I'm going to look at getting either +7 or +8 before I stop, I think. Because I'm scaling speeding levels off of this, especially if I get a 2120, right? I mean, knowledge was only a 2020. Right now it's level 26 gem. 27 because I think I'm forgetting something. Oh, 27 because of the mastery. Which means if I ever want to upgrade off of Maraline's Fallacy to a rare, I don't really have any room to do so because levels are not that valuable for me anymore, right? Levels taper off in value beyond 31, I believe is the number. It's either 30 or 31 is what I found when I was doing this. I've known this number in the past, but the point part is there's a point at which levels stop being 10% and start being 5%. And so we're approaching that point rapidly. Solution is just to not get levels on my weapon. And when you don't want levels on your weapon, Annihilating Light is by far the highest damage weapon available for this build. So we put it on. What other stuff can we do to get our damage up? We added the taming because I actually, like I said, did not need my previous rig. It helps to get over res, but like that's actually not the important thing. It's the insane amount of increased damage with hits and ailments again for each elemental type. Remember, we have all three elemental types in this build. I did add some flat fire on a jewel to help make sure I'm igniting things at a distance. So that way they're not relying on the scorch from the bots. It helps my clear a little bit, but otherwise we're blessed in there, you know? There's like Dodri still. All the other things are still where they are. I should probably consider getting a Corrupted Archon's tools, but like honestly, it doesn't really matter. Still in Mariline's. No Catalyst, because Catalyst actually reduce your damage in this a lot of the time. It's kind of funny. If we have enough crit multi there. This piece of shit chest piece is one of the weirder things. When I said I was gonna buy it, I remember everybody being like, really? Replica lore weave? And I'm like, besides Shroud, there are no real chest pieces that work like this for a build that doesn't socket their stuff in their chest. Like a lot of things you think of like Tabby, Restless Word, etc. A lot of their offensive value comes from the levels that you can corrupt onto them in addition to whatever else it does. But if I'm running my 6-link out of my boots, instead of say like a Victorio's influence per se, this is actually my best option. Which it's worth noting, by the way, influence in regular weapons is how I would go if I weren't sticking with the Merchant of Legion setup. But I realized that I could go Merchant of Legion and Annihilating Light and go crazy. You can go Vix influence if you want. I opted to stay this way because if I choose to invest in this character further down the line after getting my Mage Blood, it's going to start by replacing this chest with a Shroud of the Lightless and going life stacking, which is also the other way to get off of Annihilating Light. Life stacking with Wrath Pith and a pretty solid wand. Yep, that's the method. Like the long-term method if this character, you know, makes it that far. Some other notes. If you want damage for igniting, you can corrupt it onto Winterweave. I just saw that it was really expensive on the one that I did see, and I did not really want to like sit there and like go through the process of buying a 1 to 2C item and then corrupting it on repeat. That was gonna drive me nuts. The tree is a lot of the same. This cluster is not insanely efficient, but I don't hate it, and so I just kind of left it in for now. I'm trying to figure out how to get more points to put it together in full, and I think it's just 3 more levels and making some adjustments to tree pathing and stuff. Some small snips here and there, right? Other things of note, right? Heat Shiver, you need to have Winter's Embrace. You'll notice that my mine section has converted to the detonation speed. This is very important. Without the detonation speed, I was overthrowing my mines. That is a huge loss in damage relative to your theoretical, right? If you're sitting there like, man, my POB says that I should be cranking 25 million DPS, and I'm just struggling to do damage. It's because you're constantly overthrowing mines, and therefore, like you're throwing mines that don't get detonated and wasting them. Detonation speed helps solve that problem. It's very important. Quality your detonate mines, which I need to do. Now that I'm saying that, and also get this like mine detonation speed here. You can even get the mine detonation speed on clusters, but I think that like the traditional cluster of guerrilla tactics and surprise sabotage is just too strong, so I would not be doing that. I do have one proj cluster though, and it's for Streamline, because the last thing in the video, right? It's a terribly placed thing to bury, but if you're interested in the build, you watch this deep anyways. Proj feed, I made a slight error, or maybe not error, but like when I tested Icicle Mines returning before the league, I was coming up with about 130 was the number that I was needing to get a consistent return, somewhere between 115 and 130. And shout out to Luke Zotto for mentioning in my comments that he was getting success with like 80 to 90%. So I did some testing and like found some stuff out, and they were right. My returns feel fantastic even in fully open areas. Obviously, it feels insanely good in Sanctum, but even in insanely open areas, I was feeling good. I'm feeling good at 94, and how we're getting there is after dropping this bottom section here to take a cluster, I do have Streamlined and also one, right, just a singular, and the Anoint for Fury Bolts in here, and I have jewels that have proj feed on them, and then I take the proj feed master, and that gets me over the line. And my Icicle Mines return very, very comfortably when they need to be. So as a result of that, we can also change Festive Proj support to Trap and Mind Damage support, which means that we're, you know, full build. You can replace Trap and Mind Damage with some Woke Gems if your like stats are right for it. Check your PLB for that. Especially if you just really want to not have 10% less throwing speed. I understand it. Trust me. I hate this support so much, but it's really strong. So, what are you going to do? Alrighty. That's everything really. Oh, right. I as I'm mousing over and thinking if there's anything else, like I have my notes, they're on my second screen, and I covered everything. And as I was sitting there looking, I was like, I didn't put flats in my notes, which this is not like a you need specific flats for the build to function thing, but more like if you're running Sanctum, having 2 Quicksilvers with Enkindle to increase effect goes hard, right? Just like a little small tip from one Sanctum runner to another, or just one person who's interested, right? Other than that, thank you guys for watching. I think that's everything. If there's any questions, drop them in the comments. There'll be a PLB in the description, obviously. Stop by the Discord to stream to ask questions, hang out, etc. All that good stuff. Blah 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 blah. And I think that's it. So I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.